Hi, I'm Ariel, and this is my channel about plant medicine, homesteading, herbalism, and any random thing I want to talk about. Welcome to the first in a multi-part series about growing a living fence. I have a normal fence in my beautiful homestead, but it will only last about 20 years if I'm lucky. Why not plant something much denser, much nicer, and more beautiful out of greenery? Living fences are becoming well known in permaculture practices worldwide. It pretty much is what it says it is. It is a fence that is alive. Permaculture just means permanent culture, a way of planting and planning to create the most harmonious and abundant life for human flourishing. I take my inspiration from the ringing cedars of Russia tradition, which blends the spiritual significance of living in harmony with our landscape with pragmatic, very human needs. Needs like privacy, sound muffling, fruitful harvests, lumber, and safety. We can go as deep as we want with this. I'm imagining a succession of flowers throughout the growing season that will make my whole property and house smell amazing. All the different types of fruit I can grow, both native and acclimated here, and cool craft projects. There are 7 layers to a proper living fence, according to permaculture practices. I'm going to list them from the ground up. Other permaculture creators list from the top down, but this is just what makes sense to me. The first layer is the root layer, and these can be edible tubers, like root crops, potatoes, sweet potatoes. I'm sure I can think of other things besides potatoes. Any beneficial root systems that are going to help that piece of the property. I think a lot about planting leguminous plants in the bean family because they harbor nitrogen-fixing bacteria in their root systems. Then we have the ground cover layer, and these are going to be really low-growing herbs, maybe grasses, maybe mosses, and they're just going to keep that ground covered as a living mulch, keep the heat and protect the soil from like harsh climatic conditions like too much sun or wind, and just keep all the warmth and nutrition in the soil. My favorite ground covers are creeping thyme and elven thyme. Then we have the herbal layer, and these are going to be herbaceous plants about 1 or 2 feet high, filling out that bottom layer. They could be annual or perennial plants, but they are going to be herbaceous, which means that instead of having a woody stem or trunk, they're going to have like that soft, planty material. I'll be doing a lot of edible and medicinals in this layer, things that smell good and are really useful. If you choose annual plants that'll die back every year, you can kind of have them in succession. I'm going to use that word succession a lot because if we plan this correctly, this fence will be green all year, but in different ways. Then we have the 4th layer, the vine layer, and that is the key to this romantic fairy forest fantasy that I've been dreaming about for years. Vines are also incredibly useful for filling in gaps, for tying things together quite literally, providing stability, and of course feeding pollinators. For number 5, we have the shrub layer. In my eyes, this is going to be the meat and potatoes of the living fence. We're going to want to choose an evergreen. It's going to be evergreen all year. It's going to fill up all the space, and it's just going to form a beautiful hedge. And hedges are great because they're easily shaped. I'm going to emphasize the importance of providing animal habitat. I think there's nothing cooler than a living fence harboring all sorts of cute little forest creatures. And the plant I'm choosing is the gorgeous, incomparable Yaupon holly. Then we have 6, the low tree layer. These are going to be smaller trees, like, less than 10 feet tall usually. I know that some places have like laws about how tall your front fence can be. I think if you're generally on a homestead, you're gonna have less of those rules, but you never know. There's a lot of like kind of dumb rules about what your property can look like, at least in the US. And so, we have to consider that some people might need to have a fence that is less than 6 feet, at least in the front. These small trees will often bear nuts or fruit or just pretty flowers. And again, incredible for pollinators, so important for their beauty. I believe that beauty is a human right. These low trees will also live longer, potentially, than a lot of the other plants, like the vines and the herbs I mentioned. But the idea with those is that they're gonna keep reproducing themselves. The bigger you get in the living fence, like the taller, the more planting you'll need. And that leads me to number 7, the big old trees. These are gonna require the most planning and management because There's going to be a lot of places where maybe it's not a good idea to plant a big tree. You have to consider, like, what is this going to be like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? How much shade is it going to cast? It's going to affect what can grow underneath it. Basically, they're going to generally be long-lived. And in tropical zones, there is an 8th layer, and that is the palm layer, because palms can get super, super duper tall. And so if you're living in like the Gulf Coast, anything like that, maybe California, then you might want to add like the big palms. So now we're going to talk about special considerations that I have for my property and situation specifically. Everybody's going to have a different place they live, different needs they have. Mine is that the first part of the living fence that I'm building is my south-facing side. It's also where I get like the most sun, which is bad if I want to grow something more temperate that will fry, but awesome if I want to plant a bunch of fruit-bearing shrubs and trees, because generally trees produce more fruit in full sun. There's also a utility easement zone pretty close to this fence line that I'm building, so I have to think really hard about the root systems of every large plant that I'm planting. I think that it would be the most prudent course of action to just plant low trees in that front fence and then save the big trees for the east, west, and north sides of my property. Hello, child. You're supposed to be outside. The entire western edge is forested, and everything already has a livestock fence around it, which makes things a lot easier for the animals I'm gonna get, and the human animals that I'm raising right now, that you continue to hear yapping and screeching in the background. The eastern side is mostly covered, but the southeastern side, in between me and my neighbor's property, isn't covered at all. The north side of our property is somewhat wooded, somewhat open, and it is directly adjacent to a horse ranch. For now, I'm really mostly focused on the south fence line and the little southeast bit that is open. I'll pull up my little property survey to show you. We were required to have this done when we purchased this homestead. It's actually such a useful document because it maps out exactly where the utilities, where anything hidden is. Of course, like, it's always a good idea to call 811 where you dig, but so far I haven't called 811 and I haven't had any fuck-ups, basically. So as I mentioned, a lot of larger tree species and even smaller trees with water-hungry or aggressive root systems are completely out of the question, including, sadly, my favorite willow tree. I love willow trees so much. My daughter's name is Willow, and so I promised her that I would plant willows on the property. I just haven't found like the proper spot for it yet, because they need like realistically 50 to 100 feet of clearance. And it's not just willows. A lot of trees, even birches that I adore, are gonna have these water-hungry, wandering roots, and I just have to avoid them in general for the south part of the fence. I'm gonna be choosing small trees for the front section with demure, mindful, and well-behaved root systems. So the front section is gonna be a lot of shrubs, mostly that Yopon holly, some beautyberry, and any trees I plant, I'll just have to keep up with the pruning on them, which is fine. I love pruning. It's kind of like a Zen therapy for me. Living fences don't need to be a perfect straight line. I imagine it's gonna get rounder and kind of squiggly over the years, and I welcome that kind of natural, fun variation. I'm more interested in living systems that will get better and more beautiful over time, and I'm thinking multi-generationally, like what are my kids gonna inherit? And then involving them in the process as much as possible, letting them choose trees and plants. I have this really strong image of being ensconced in like a secret garden filled with leaves and vines and flowers and birds everywhere. I've been yapping a lot, so let's actually go look at the stuff that I've started to plant and plant more stuff together. Today I'm going to show you guys the living fence that I am starting to plant around the front part of my property. Well, as you can see, I have a existing normal fence, and I have like a nice, I don't know, livestock fence with a pretty gate in the front. Fences don't last forever, And my dream is to have a living fence made out of actual trees and shrubs and vines that will just form a beautiful, dense little wall around my property someday. This is a long game, not a short game, so I'm going to show you the beginning of it. So the first things I started planting were passion flower vines, Passiflora incarnata, and related species. I have like 3 of them here so far. I actually have 5, but the ants have been eating them. So these are the ones you can see. It's also a big pollinator magnet. So the point of passion flower is to be like the vine that weaves around the someday trees. You can harvest the passion flower leaves, flowers, and fruit for medicine and food. They also come in like rainbow colors. I think this is a pink one. I've put American Beautyberry on the center of each little fence line. I'm using these temporary fences as measurements for how far I should space plants. This little guy is gonna get pretty tall, probably up to the top of that fence, and it's gonna have bright purple berries, also great for pollinators. They make a weird jelly. There's also a sweet potato vine, which I'll show shortly. And the sweet potato is cool because it's a lower growing vine, so it'll fill in those gaps, and it'll create food for you forever. This is a Chinese fringe tree. It makes pretty flowers. It has some really minor, more obscure medicinal benefits, but mostly it's just going to be here to fill up space between the future trees. It used to be in my landscaping garden, but I thought it would serve us better over here. And one of its benefits is that the ants don't seem to like it, and we have this huge problem with ants. Speaking of ants, they had recently absolutely devoured my entire new Seven Sisters rose, because apparently leafcutter ants love roses, and then that was the beginning of my war with them. I actually fed them all grits, like a good southern mother, and that exploded their underground nests. More on that soon. Anyway, she's made a comeback.
Here is the Yopon holly. This entire western forage edge is covered in it. In fact, this whole forest is basically a living fence in and of itself, but a lot less manicured and more wild than I'm gonna need to put in on my southern edge. As you can see, it has the tall trees, the low trees, even a bunch of vines, all kinds of stuff going on here. Yopon holly is called Ilex vomitoria in Latin, and that is named after an indigenous people's beverage. The indigenous peoples here made a beverage featuring Yopon holly containing psychoactive plants, basically a Texan ayahuasca. Super interesting. I don't know much about this, but I do know that Yopon holly by itself is just a lovely caffeinated tea beverage. It does not make you vomit. These are the Yopon holly berries. Birds love them. They are toxic mildly to humans. And when you buy Yopon holly plants at the nursery, they're mostly going to be female because people value the berries for ornamental value. I repeat myself. I always try to plant the berries when I see them because seedlings are a little stronger than plants grown from cuttings, but I am grateful that this whole forest floor is covered in tiny baby Yopon holly runners. We're going to be digging all of those up and installing them every 10 feet on the fence. I'm going to install 2 plants per fence pole, and I'm going to install a lot of the mulchy, sandy, loamy, delicious native soil with it. We're putting it in its little trench with its nice rich soil. We're having accidents with filming. Haha. I don't recommend that. I feel like so much of my early stage landscaping in my homestead is just moving piles of pine needles from place to place, but it's an important step. Like I said, we're installing these every 10 feet, and I am honestly so blessed to have a bunch of these sprouting up on my property for free, because the amount of plants that I'm installing is probably, like, quick math, like 100 or so. That's so much money at the nursery, I couldn't even imagine. I am mulching really heavily because these plants were formerly in the shade and we want them to have the best possible start in life. These hollies can grow as much as 2 or 3 feet in a single year, especially in full sun like this. So by this time next year, it's going to be more filled out. Now you have me digging a hole like usual, and I'm going to show off to you my nice dark loamy sand. It could be better, but it's pretty good. I'm planting an acerola cherry, a Barbados cherry, and that is the #1 source of organic vitamin C that you're going to buy. If you've ever had like a vitamin C smoothie when you're sick, that really tart taste, the vitamin C source is acerola cherry. It's a semi-native. It's going to be very happy here. Now I'm planting some false indigo. These have beautiful flowers. They're a Texas native, and they can be useful as dye and medicine. I'm excited about that. I love to just find random native flowers that could be useful for my fence. I also planted an arborvitae that has really well-behaved roots. It's a really common living fence tree. Then I planted some blackberries to climb up all around it. Now I'm gonna just show you how the fence has been going. This is what I have so far. You can't see the raspberry and the beautyberry I planted because they've kind of lost their leaves for winter. But everywhere that I put this pine mulch is where I planted a plant. So this is kind of my beginning stage before picture, and I am excited to update throughout the months about how this fills out and grows up. Some may think that growing a thick, dense fence could be a little unfriendly, but I feel like I have a right to want to frolic around my yard in a bikini without feeling weird or like I'm putting on a show for passerby. A lot of people are called shy nowadays when we just recognize the importance of protecting our energy. I want anyone who visits my house to feel that ensconced, comfortable feeling that they are safe and secure. Sure, it's gonna take at least a year, probably more like 5 years to get the full effect of this living fence that I'm planning and plotting, but patience is a virtue and it's good for me. While everything that I have been choosing and will continue to plant here is really specific to my Southeast Texas Piney Woods microclimate, I'm Zone 9A by the way, I encourage you to look at all the other living fence videos on YouTube. There's really cool ones with people weaving together like willow trees and such. Wherever you live and whatever your yard looks like, this is your sign to incorporate living plants into your fence line. Even if it's just some beans or some vines, it'll make a huge difference in your quality of life and happiness.
Well, that is all I have for you for this video. I'm gonna try to give an update on these every couple months as I plant more things as it grows. We're in the dead of winter right now, or as wintry as you can call Southeast Texas, but we do got some frosty days. So I think I'll do my next video on this in the early spring and we'll see if anything has changed, and I'll plant a bunch of stuff then. I'm really excited to see how everything grows up and fills out. This is like the most fun art project as a gardener, and I'm excited to have you guys along for the ride. I appreciate you all for being here, and I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a subscribe and a like and maybe even shared this video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!